The crystalline towers of Ashara Prime had stood for 3,000 years. They sparkled under the light of twin suns, creating rainbow patterns across the peaceful cities below. The Veshan people lived in harmony, their telepathic minds connected in gentle unity. They had never known war. They had never needed to, until the Korth came. Ambassador Crystallis stood in the council chamber, her transparent form trembling. Through the massive windows she could see the dark shapes moving between the stars. The Korth swarm had already consumed 2 colony worlds. Billions of Veshan had simply vanished, absorbed into the endless hunger of the hive. "We have 1 week," the chief counselor said, his mental voice heavy with despair. "Perhaps less. The swarm grows stronger with each world it devours." Crystallis looked around the chamber. 12 of the wisest Veshan minds sat in a circle, and all of them were afraid. Their people had no weapons, no warriors, no concept of violence. They were lambs before wolves. "We must send the beacon," Crystallis said aloud. Speaking was rare for Veshan, used only in moments of great importance. "We must ask for help." "From whom?" another counselor asked. "We have isolated ourselves for millennia." Who would answer? "Anyone," Crystallis replied. "Everyone. We send the message to all known space. Someone must have mercy on us," the council agreed. They had no other choice. Crystallis moved to the quantum communications array, a device they had never used for anything but scientific observation. She placed her crystalline hands on the interface and poured her thoughts into it. Every emotion, every desperate hope, every image of her dying people flowed into the message. "This is the Veshan Collective," the message began. "We are a peaceful people. We have never harmed anyone. We are dying. The Korth swarm has come to our worlds. We have no defenses. We have no weapons. We are begging anyone who can hear this, please help us, please, we do not want to die." The beacon launched, spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. It reached 100 civilizations within hours. The responses came quickly. Too quickly. The Altarian Empire sent their regrets. They had their own borders to protect. The Silicon Collective offered prayers, but no ships. The methane breathers of Sector 7 expressed deep sympathy and then went silent. One after another, every civilization responded the same way. They were sorry, but they could not help. The Korth were too dangerous. The risk was too great. Crystallis felt her hope dying with each refusal. The Veshan had reached out to the galaxy, and the galaxy had turned away. 3 days passed. The Korth consumed another colony. The swarm was now at the edge of the home system. The end was near. Then on the 4th day, a new signal arrived. It was harsh and loud, transmitted in a language the computers struggled to translate. The words came through broken and strange. Coordinates received. Eta, 40 hours. Hold position. UHSF Vengeful. Crystallis stared at the message. UHSF. She knew those letters. Every civilized species knew those letters. United Human Space Fleet. "No," she whispered. "Not them." The council chamber erupted in panic. Telepathic voices screamed across the mental network. Humans. The Death Worlders. The species so violent, so aggressive, so terrifying that the Galactic Council had banned them from all civilized space. "They are worse than the Korth," one counselor cried. "At least the swarm merely consumes. Humans destroy for pleasure." "I have heard the stories," another said. "They come from a death world where everything tries to kill everything else. They evolved as predators. They have killed their own kind in wars that lasted generations." Crystallis had heard the stories too. Humans were the nightmare species. They had nearly destroyed themselves with weapons that could crack planets. They fought with a fury that no other species could understand. Where other civilizations had wars that lasted days or weeks, human conflicts burned for years, sometimes decades. They never surrendered. They never stopped. The Galactic Council had tried to integrate them once. It had failed. Humans could not accept the peaceful ways of civilized space. They were too aggressive, too territorial, too willing to solve problems with violence. They had been exiled to their own corner of the galaxy, forbidden from entering council space, and now they were coming here. "What do we do?" the chief counselor asked. "Do we tell them we made a mistake? Do we ask them to stay away?" Crystallis looked out the window again. The Korth swarm was visible now, a dark cloud spreading across the stars. In 2 days, maybe 3, they would reach Ashara Prime. The swarm would consume every Veshan. Their civilization, their culture, their very existence would end. She thought about the human response. They had not asked for payment. They had not demanded anything. They had simply said they were coming. Someone had answered their plea. Even if that someone was a monster. We wait, Crystalis said quietly. We have 40 hours. We prepare our people. We tell them that help is coming. She paused, her crystalline form flickering with fear and desperate hope. And we pray that the monsters who save us are not worse than the monsters who hunt us. The council fell silent. The message was sent to all Veshan. Humanity was coming. Their saviors would arrive in 40 hours. Across Vishara Prime, the people did not know whether to feel hope or terror. Perhaps Crystalis thought they would feel both. 40 hours felt like both an eternity and an instant. The Korth swarm moved closer with each passing moment, consuming everything in their path. The Veshan could only watch and wait. Crystalis stood on the bridge of the Veshan flagship, the Harmony of Light. It was not a warship because the Veshan had never built such things. It was a research vessel, converted hastily into a command center. Around her, Veshan officials monitored the approaching swarm with growing dread. Ambassador, one of them said, his mental voice shaking. The humans should be arriving soon, if they are coming. Crystalis was about to respond when every sensor on the ship screamed at once. Space itself began to tear. At the edge of the system, reality ripped open. Not the gentle shimmer of normal, faster-than-light travel, but violent wounds in the fabric of space. Energy poured out in waves that made the sensors go dark. When they came back online, the tiers were closing and something had come through. 12 ships hung in the darkness. They were nothing like the sleek, elegant vessels of the Galactic Council. These ships looked like they had been built for one purpose, war. Their hulls were dark metal, scarred and pitted from countless battles. Armor plating covered every surface. Weapon ports bristled along their sides like the spines of some predatory creature. The largest ship sat in the center of the formation. It was massive, nearly twice the size of the Veshan flagship. Along its side, painted in white letters that seemed to glow, was its name, UHSF, Vengeful. They are here, Crystalis whispered. The humans are here. A communication signal cut through all channels. The voice that came through was female, speaking in the harsh sounds of human language. The computers translated quickly. This is Admiral Elena Kovic of the United Human Space Fleet commanding the Vengeful. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Transmit tactical data immediately. No greeting. No diplomatic pleasantries. Just direct military efficiency. The Veshan communications officer looked at Crystalis in panic. They had no tactical data. They did not think in terms of tactics or strategy. They were scientists and philosophers, not soldiers. Tell them we need to establish proper diplomatic protocols first, the chief counselor said through the mental link. Crystalis sent the message. There was a brief pause, then the human admiral responded. Negative. The Korth swarm will reach your homeworld in 18 hours. We do not have time for protocols. Send us everything you have on the swarm's movements, composition, and attack patterns. Now. The word now carried a weight of command that made even the peaceful Veshan obey, without thinking. They transmitted everything they had observed about the Korth. Minutes later, another message came from the Vengeful. We are deploying a liaison team to your flagship for coordination. Prepare to receive a shuttle. A small craft launched from one of the human ships. It moved with sharp, precise movements, reaching the Harmony of Light in minutes. The Veshan had no military docking procedures, but they managed to guide it to one of their airlocks. Crystalis moved to the docking bay, her crystalline body humming with nervousness. The airlock door opened and the humans entered. There were 5 of them wearing dark armor that covered their bodies completely. They moved with a grace that seemed wrong, too smooth and predatory. The lead figure removed its helmet and Crystalis saw a human face for the first time. It was a male with dark skin and darker eyes. His face was scarred, one mark running across his cheek. He looked at Crystalis and the other Veshan without any visible emotion. Commander James Harrow, he said. His voice was deep and controlled. We are here to coordinate the defense of your world. Crystalis tried to maintain her composure. We are grateful for your help, Commander. But we must inform you that we have no military capabilities. We cannot fight. We know, Harrow said. That is why we are here. You called for help. We answered. He moved to the bridge's tactical display. Show me the Korth positions. The Veshan brought up the display. Thousands of Korth vessels spread across the system like a plague. Harrow studied it for a few seconds, then nodded. Standard swarm formation. Vanguard of 200 vessels, main fleet behind. They will hit your homeworld in waves, overwhelming any defense. He looked at Crystalis. We have fought the Korth before. 3 times. We know how to make them bleed. 3 times? Crystalis asked, shocked. You have faced them and survived? More than survived, one of the other humans said. This one was female, with red hair visible when she removed her helmet. We sent them running. Twice. The 3rd time we destroyed their hive completely. Crystalis felt something she had not expected. Hope. If these humans had defeated the Korth before, perhaps they truly could save the Veshan. What do you need from us? She asked. Harrow pulled up a tactical map. Keep your civilian ships away from the combat zone. Get every Veshan you can into underground shelters. When we engage the Korth, it will get dangerous. Debris, radiation, weapons fire, none of it will be safe for your people. You are 12 ships, the chief counselor said, his mental voice heavy with doubt. The Korth have thousands. How can you possibly win? Harrow looked at him. For the first time, something like a smile crossed his scarred face. It was not a comforting expression. Because we are human, he said simply. We do not fight fair. We do not fight clean. We fight to win and we fight to protect. Your people are under our protection now. The Korth will learn what that means. He turned back to his team. Get back to the Vengeful. Tell the Admiral we have the tactical picture. Initiate Protocol Helldiver. The humans move toward the airlock. Crystalis called after them. Commander Harrow, why did you come? The rest of the galaxy abandoned us. Why did humans answer? Harrow stopped and looked back at her. His dark eyes were impossible to read. Because someone asked for help, he said. That is reason enough. Then they were gone, back to their shuttle, back to their warships. Crystalis watched through the viewport as the human fleet began to move. They positioned themselves between the Veshan homeworld and the approaching Korth swarm. 12 ships against thousands. The monsters had come to save them. Now they would see if the cure was worse than the disease. The Korth swarm came like a wave of darkness across the stars. 200 vessels in the vanguard, each one a living ship, pulsing with organic technology. They had destroyed civilizations for 10,000 years. They had never known defeat by such a small force. They were about to learn. Crystalis watched from the harmony of light as the human fleet moved into position. The 12 ships spread out in a defensive formation around Vashar Prime. They looked impossibly small against the massive swarm approaching them. The humans are broadcasting something, the Veshan communications officer said. Admiral Kovich's voice came through, transmitted on all channels so everyone could hear. All ships, weapons free. Show them why humans do not back down. Make them remember this day. The Korth swarm did not slow down. They never did. They crashed forward like a tidal wave, expecting to sweep the humans aside. The human ships opened fire. What happened next would be burned into Veshan memory forever. The elegant energy weapons used by most civilizations were beautiful, precise and relatively humane. Human weapons were none of these things. Massive railguns fired solid metal slugs at a fraction of light speed. Each impact tore through Korth vessels like paper. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked through space, detonating in blooms of atomic fire. Laser batteries carved burning lines across the darkness. The Korth swarm met the human line and began to die. By the twin suns, Crystalis whispered. They are not just fighting. They are slaughtering. The human ships moved with impossible precision. They twisted and turned in patterns that should have killed their crews from the G-forces alone. But humans had evolved on a heavy gravity world. What would crush a Vishan was merely uncomfortable for them. One human destroyer, the Indomitable, broke from formation and drove straight into the Korth formation. Weapons blazing from every port, it cut through the enemy like a knife. Korth vessels exploded around it. But the Indomitable kept going deeper into the swarm. They are insane, the chief counselor said. That ship will be destroyed. He was right. The Korth surrounded the Indomitable, boarding swarms attaching to its hull. The organic invaders began burning through the armor. Crystalis accessed the human communication channels, something the humans had not forbidden. She wanted to understand what was happening. What she heard chilled her crystalline core. Boarding teams in sections 7 through 12, a human voice shouted. CQC protocols now. CQC. The Veshan computers translated it. Close quarter combat, fighting inside the ship. The sounds that came through were not the sounds of civilized warfare. Explosions echoed through metal corridors. Humans screamed, but not in fear, in rage, in defiance. The wet sounds of Korth dying mixed with human war cries. And through it all, one phrase repeated over and over. Not one step back. Not one step back. 20 minutes later, the Indomitable emerged from the swarm. Its hull was scorched and breached in a dozen places, but it was still fighting. Behind it, the Korth vessels it had passed through were dead, floating debris. The human ships had destroyed over 50 Korth vessels. They had lost none, but the victory came at a cost. Crystallis could see the damage. The Indomitable was badly hurt. 2 other human ships showed severe damage, and then the unthinkable happened. A Korth bioweapon hit the human cruiser Liberty. The organic acid ate through the armor, reaching the reactor core. The ship began to break apart. They are evacuating, the Vaishon sensor operator said. Escape pods are launching, but not all of them. Crystallis watched in horror as the Liberty turned toward a cluster of Korth vessels. Its engines flared to maximum power. What are they doing? She asked. Admiral Kovach's voice came through, heavy with emotion. Godspeed, Liberty. Your sacrifice will be remembered. The Liberty rammed into the Korth formation at full speed. Its reactor went critical at the moment of impact. The explosion vaporized 20 Korth vessels instantly. The shockwave damaged dozens more. The humans had used their dying ship as a weapon. Crystallis felt something crack inside her understanding of the universe. What kind of species did this? What kind of beings fought with such terrible determination? The Korth vanguard was in chaos now. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, they had lost over a third of their forces. The swarm began to pull back, regrouping. The human fleet did not pursue. They held their position around Vashara Prime. We need medical assistance, Commander Harrow's voice came through. The Indomitable took heavy casualties. Do you have medical facilities? Yes, Crystallis responded immediately. Send your wounded to us. Shuttles began arriving at the Harmony of Light. The Veshan medical teams had prepared their best facilities, but nothing prepared them for what they saw. Humans carried humans on stretchers. Some were unconscious, their bodies broken in ways that should have been fatal. Others walked on their own, despite injuries that would have killed any Veshan instantly. They bled red blood that looked wrong against their pale or dark skin. One human Marine was brought in, his armor removed to reveal burns across half his body. The Veshan doctors began treating him with their advanced healing technology. Crystallis stayed with him, curious and horrified in equal measure. The Marine's eyes opened. He looked at her with pain-filled eyes. Did we stop them? He asked, his voice weak. Yes, Crystallis said. You stopped the vanguard. You saved many lives today. The Marine smiled despite his pain. Good, that is good, Crystallis had to ask. Why do you fight like this? Like you have nothing to lose? You throw yourselves at death without hesitation. The Marine was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his words changed everything Crystallis thought she knew about humans. We do not fight like we have nothing to lose, he said. We fight like we have everything to lose. Every human on those ships has people they love, families, friends, home worlds. When we fight knowing that if we fail, everyone we love could die. So we do not fail. We cannot fail. He looked at Crystallis with those pain-filled eyes. You called for help. That makes you part of our pack now. We protect the pack always, Crystallis understood then. Humans were not mindless killing machines. They were not monsters who loved violence. They were pack predators who had learned that the universe was cruel, and the only way to survive was to be more determined than the cruelty itself. A priority message came through from the Vengeful. Admiral Kovach's voice was grim. All ships, all personnel. Long-range sensors have detected the main Korth Hive fleet. 50,000 vessels, ETA 12 hours. This is not a vanguard. This is a full extermination force. Silence fell across the Vishon Bridge. 50,000 vessels. The humans had barely survived against 200. But when Crystallis accessed the human channels, she did not hear despair. She heard Admiral Kovach giving orders, heard crews responding with determination. The humans were not retreating. They were preparing for a bigger fight. This is going to get loud, Admiral Kovach transmitted to the Veshan. Get your people to the deepest shelters you have. And whatever you do, do not leave them until we tell you it is safe. Crystallis realized with growing horror and awe what was about to happen. The humans were going to fight 50,000 Korth vessels with 9 damaged ships. They were going to make their stand here, at Vashara Prime, protecting a species they had just met. The monsters were about to show the galaxy what they truly were. The Korth Hive fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a living nightmare. 50,000 vessels filled the space at the edge of the Veshan system. They moved as one, a single consciousness spread across thousands of ships. The Hive Queen commanded them all from the massive bioship at the center of the fleet. On the bridge of the Vengeful, Admiral Elena Kovac studied the sensor readings. Her face showed no fear, only cold calculation. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. "Fleet status?" she asked. "9 ships operational, Admiral," her tactical officer reported. "Liberty destroyed, Indomitable and Damascus heavily damaged but still combat capable. We have 70% ammunition remaining, 60% missiles." Kovac nodded. 9 ships against 50,000. The mathematics were impossible. No sane commander would take this fight. But Elena Kovac had not survived 20 years of deep space combat by being sane. She had survived by being stubborn, clever, and absolutely unwilling to abandon those who needed her. "Order the Veshan fleet to retreat to the far side of their homeworld," she commanded. "Minimum safe distance behind the planet's mass." "Admiral," her first officer said quietly, "they will ask why." Kovac's expression hardened. "Tell them it is for their own protection. What we are about to do, they should not see it unless necessary." The order was transmitted. The Veshan ships, confused but obedient, began moving to the far side of Vishara Prime. Crystallis, still aboard the Harmony of Light, demanded an explanation. "Admiral Kovac, why are you sending us away? We should fight together." The Admiral's response was gentle but firm. "Ambassador, you are a peaceful people. What we are about to do is not peaceful. It is not clean. It is not civilized. We are going to use weapons that the Galactic Council has forbidden. We are going to fight in ways that will horrify you. I will not make you watch that unless you have no choice, but you will all die." Crystallis protested. There was a pause. Then Kovac spoke again, and her voice carried a weight of absolute certainty. "Perhaps. But if we do, we will take so many of them with us that the Korth will remember humanity forever. They will fear to attack any world we have sworn to protect. Now go, Ambassador. Get your people to safety. Let us do what we do best." The Veshan fleet retreated. They could still monitor the communications, still watch on long-range sensors, but they were out of the immediate combat zone. Admiral Kovac stood from her command chair and addressed her fleet on the open channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Kovac. You all know the situation. We are outnumbered more than 5,000 to 1. By all conventional logic, we should retreat. But we are not going to do that. We are not going to abandon these people. They asked for help and we answered. That means something. That means everything." She paused, letting her words sink in. Every human on every ship listened. "We are going to implement Protocol Olympus. Yes, I know what that means. I know the risks. But if we are going to die today, we are going to die protecting innocent lives. We are going to die as humans, standing between the monsters and those who cannot defend themselves. And we are going to make the Korth pay such a terrible price that they will never forget what happens when they threaten human-protected space." A cheer erupted across the fleet, not a celebration but a war cry, the sound of humans accepting impossible odds and choosing to fight anyway. "Deploy Olympus weapons," Kovac ordered. "All ships form defensive sphere around Vishara Prime. Prepare antimatter warheads, stellar disruptors, and Kasaba howitzer systems. We are going to show the Korth what happens when you corner a predator." The 9 human ships moved into formation. They formed a perfect sphere around the Veshan homeworld, each ship positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. From their hulls, weapons emerged that had been hidden until now, weapons banned by every civilized treaty in the galaxy. Then something impossible happened. The Vengeful began broadcasting on Korth frequencies, the same biochemical signals the swarm used to communicate. But humans were not supposed to know this language. The Korth had never communicated with what they saw as prey species. The message was simple and clear. This world is under human protection. Withdraw or be annihilated. This is your only warning. The Korth Hive Queen received the message. For the first time in her long existence, she felt something like surprise. How did these small beings know the language of the swarm? How did they dare to threaten? She sent her response through the hive mind. Destroy them all. The 50,000 vessels surged forward. Weapons free. Admiral Kovac said calmly. Fire at will. Hell came to the Threnal system. The human ships unleashed weapons that bent the rules of physics. Antimatter warheads detonated in carefully calculated positions, each explosion destroying dozens of Korth vessels. Kasaba howitzer nuclear devices focused atomic blasts into narrow beams that sliced through enemy formations like a hot knife through flesh. Stellar disruptors created miniature supernovas that vaporized everything within kilometers. But the humans were not just using powerful weapons. They were using precision and knowledge. Every shot targeted specific ship types. Every missile was programmed to seek specific biosignatures. Crystallis, watching from the far side of the planet, finally understood. The humans had not just fought the Korth before. They had studied them. They had dissected captured ships, analyzed their biology, mapped their communication networks. They had learned everything about their enemy and had prepared for this exact scenario. Humans did not just fight. They waged war with scientific precision. The Korth swarm crashed against the human defensive sphere like a wave against a cliff. Thousands died in the first minutes, but there were always more. The swarm adapted, changed tactics, overwhelmed through sheer numbers. One by one, the human ships began to fall. The Damascus took critical damage and went silent, its reactor offline. The Indomitable, already damaged, took a direct hit to its bridge. The ship continued fighting on auxiliary control, but Crystallis knew it was dying. 6 human ships remained functional, then 5, then 4. Admiral Kovac stood on the bridge of the Vengeful as it shook from impact after impact. Alarms screamed. Fires burned in 3 sections. Half her crew was dead or wounded. "Admiral," her tactical officer shouted over the chaos. "We have identified the Hive Queen's ship. Sending coordinates now." Kovac looked at the tactical display. The Hive Queen's massive bioship sat at the center of the swarm, protected by thousands of lesser vessels. It was the brain of the entire Korth fleet. If they could destroy it, the swarm would fall into chaos, but reaching it would require everything they had left. "All ships," Kovac transmitted, "target the Hive Queen. Full assault." "This is our last chance." The remaining human ships changed formation. They drove forward in a spearhead directly at the heart of the swarm. Weapons blazing, shields failing, hulls breaching. They pushed through the Korth fleet with pure determination. The Vengeful led the charge. Admiral Kovac watched as her ship tore through enemy vessels, getting closer to the Hive Queen with each second. Hull breaches on all decks. Someone shouted, "Reactor containment failing." "Keep going," Kovac ordered. "Get me to that queen." The Vengeful was dying around her. Explosions rocked the ship. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by emergency red lighting. "Evacuate the ship," Kovac ordered her crew. "Everyone to the escape pods, now." "Admiral, you need to go too," her first officer shouted. Kovac shook her head. "No, I need to make this shot. I can do it from here manually. Go. That is an order." Her crew hesitated, but they obeyed. One by one, they abandoned ship, fleeing in escape pods. Within minutes, Kovac was alone on the bridge of the dying Vengeful. She sat in the command chair and took manual control of the weapons. The ship was close now, so close to the Hive Queen. She could see the massive bioship on her screens, pulsing with organic light. "For every human who died today," Kovac whispered, "for every innocent life you have taken, for everyone who called for help and had it answered, this is for them." She fired. The last antimatter warhead in the Vengeful's arsenal streaked across space. It hit the Hive Queen's ship dead center and detonated. The explosion was bright enough to be seen across the system. When it cleared, the Hive Queen was gone, and with her death, the Korth swarm fell apart. Without the Hive Queen's guiding consciousness, 50,000 vessels lost their coordination. They began attacking each other, their primitive individual minds unable to form coherent strategy. The swarm turned on itself in savage cannibalistic fury. Admiral Elena Kovac watched from the Vengeful as the Korth destroyed themselves. She smiled, then closed her eyes as her ship finally broke apart around her. The battle was won. 1 week after the battle, Vishara Prime was still counting the cost of its salvation. The Korth swarm was gone, destroyed by their own confusion after the Hive Queen's death. Their ships floated as dead debris in space, a graveyard of organic technology. The Veshan had survived. Their civilization would continue, but the price had been terrible. 6 human ships destroyed. The Damascus indomitable liberty, steadfast warriors' resolve, and the vengeful, all gone. Thousands of humans had died defending a world they had never seen before, protecting people they had just met. Crystalis stood in the memorial garden that the Vishan had created in the center of their capital city. Crystalline pillars rose toward the sky, each one inscribed with the name of a fallen human. The Vishan did not fully understand human funeral customs, but they were trying their best to honor those who had saved them. Commander James Harrow approached, walking slowly. He had survived, though he bore new scars. Most of the human survivors did. They moved like wounded predators, still dangerous but hurting. "The garden is beautiful," Harrow said quietly. "They would have appreciated it." "We do not know if we have done this correctly," Crystalis admitted. "Your death rituals are different from ours. We consulted your databases, but we worry we have made mistakes." Harrow shook his head. "There are no mistakes in honoring the dead. Every culture does it differently. What matters is that you remember them. That is all they would have wanted." Crystalis's crystalline form shimmered with emotion. "How do you do it, Commander? How do you lose so many and still continue?" Harrow was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. "We remember them by celebrating what they did, not mourning what we lost. Every human who died here made a choice. They chose to stand between innocent people and destruction. They chose to fight for something bigger than themselves. That choice matters. That choice means everything." He looked at the memorial pillars. "We make sure they are never forgotten. We make sure their sacrifice was not in vain." The Vishan Council had called an official meeting for this day. Crystalis and Harrow walked together to the council chamber. Inside, the 12 counselors waited, along with representatives from the 3 surviving human ships. The chief counselor stood, his mental voice broadcasting to all present. Humanity came when no one else would. They fought when victory was impossible. They died protecting us. The Veshan Collective owes a debt that can never be repaid. He gestured, and containers were brought forward. They contained rare crystals, advanced technology, territorial rights to 3 uninhabited systems, a fortune by any measure. "We offer you this payment," the chief counselor said. "Everything we have of value. It is not enough, but it is all we can give." Harrow stepped forward. To Crystalis's surprise, he shook his head. "We do not want payment." Shock rippled through the chamber. The counselors looked at each other in confusion. "You must want something," the chief counselor said. "No one fights for nothing. No one dies for nothing." "We do not fight for profit," Harrow said firmly. "We fight because it is right. We fight because you needed help and no one else would answer. That is reason enough." "Then what do you want?" Crystalis asked. "There must be something." Harrow looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every Veshan present. "Remember that someone answered your call," he said. "Remember that when you were dying, someone came. And when you hear another distress call, when another civilization cries out for help, answer it. Do for others what we did for you. That is all we ask." The words hung in the air like a commandment. The Veshan had been saved by monsters, and now those monsters were asking them to become saviors themselves. The chief counselor bowed, a gesture of deep respect that Veshan rarely gave. "It will be done. We will remember. We will answer." A priority transmission interrupted the meeting. It was a message from the Galactic Council, transmitted on official channels. A holographic image appeared, a counselor from one of the founding species, its form shimmering with authority. "The Galactic Council demands that humanity stand trial for the use of forbidden weapons in the Threnal system. Antimatter warheads, stellar disruptors, and nuclear devices are banned by galactic law. Humanity must answer for these crimes." Silence fell. The human survivors looked at each other. They had known this was coming. They had used weapons that civilized space had forbidden, weapons too terrible for polite warfare. Crystalis felt rage building in her crystalline core. These pompous council members, sitting safe in their protected space, dared to accuse the humans who had saved her people? Before Harrow could respond, the chief counselor stood. The Veshan Collective withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The holographic counselor looked shocked. "You cannot." "We can and we have," the chief counselor interrupted. "For 3,000 years we have been part of your council. We have followed your laws and accepted your wisdom. But when we needed you, when we were dying, you abandoned us. Every single one of you chose safety over compassion. Only humanity answered our call." He turned to Harrow. If using forbidden weapons is what it takes to save innocent lives, then your laws are worthless. If humanity is criminal for protecting the helpless, then we want no part of your civilization. The Veshan Collective hereby declares a formal alliance with humanity. We will stand with them as they stood with us. The holographic counselor sputtered with indignation, but the chief counselor ended the transmission with a wave of his hand. Crystallis felt something she had never experienced before. Pride. Her people had been saved by monsters, and now they were choosing to stand with those monsters against the entire galaxy. The news spread quickly. The Veshan Collective, one of the oldest and most respected civilizations in Council space, had withdrawn and allied with the forbidden humans. The decision sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and then something unexpected happened. Other distress calls began arriving at human space. Not from Council civilizations, but from the oppressed, the forgotten, the species too weak to defend themselves. They had heard what happened at Vishara Prime. They had learned that humanity answered calls for help that everyone else ignored. Dozens of messages, then hundreds, each one begging for help, for protection, for someone to stand between them and whatever threatened them. 3 months after the Battle of Vishara Prime, a new ship entered the system. It was human, freshly built, bearing the scars of construction rather than combat. Its name was painted proudly on the hull, UHSF Crystallis. Admiral Elena Kovac stood on its bridge. She had survived after all. Her escape pod had been recovered by the Damascus's crew before that ship fell. She was thinner now, bearing the scars of her ordeal, but her eyes held the same fierce determination. Crystallis was brought aboard for the ship's dedication ceremony. She stood before the Admiral, her crystalline form glowing with emotion. "You named it after me," she said, almost unable to believe it. "I named it after the first person who had the courage to call us," Kovac replied. "You were afraid of us. The entire galaxy told you we were monsters. But you called anyway because your people needed help. That took courage." "I was terrified," Crystallis admitted. "Fear is not the absence of courage," Kovac said. "Courage is acting despite fear. You taught us something important, Ambassador. You taught us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help." A priority message interrupted them. Another distress call, this time from a species on the far side of the galaxy. They were under attack. They were dying. They were begging for help. Kovac looked at the message, then at her crew. Every one of them was ready. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing what it meant. "Set course," Admiral Kovac ordered. "Maximum speed. Someone needs our help." As the Crystallis turned toward the distant stars, Crystallis herself stood on the observation deck, watching. She thought about the journey her people had taken. They had sent a desperate message into the void, and the monsters had answered. But they were not monsters. Not really. They were humans, frightening, violent, and absolutely unwilling to let innocent people die if they could prevent it. They were predators who had evolved past killing for pleasure and now killed only to protect. The galaxy had feared humanity's capacity for violence. Now the galaxy was learning what that violence looked like when directed at evil itself. Word spread across the stars. When the helpless cried out, when the innocent faced annihilation, when the desperate sent their plea into the void, humanity answered. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand gratitude. They simply came, fought, and died if necessary to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Galactic Council trembled. Their carefully maintained order was cracking. Species were leaving to join humanity's growing alliance. The Council's power was built on the promise of protection. But when that protection failed, humanity had stepped in. Crystallis watched the stars pass by and thought about the future. Her people had been saved by their worst nightmare. And in being saved, they had learned that sometimes monsters were exactly what the universe needed, because monsters did not always destroy. Sometimes they protected. Sometimes they saved. Sometimes they answered a plea for help when no one else would. Their plea had been heard, and humanity, the feared ones, had replied, not with words of comfort or promises of aid. They had replied with action, with sacrifice, with blood and fire and absolute determination to protect the innocent. The galaxy would remember the Battle of Vishara Prime. They would remember that humanity had answered the call, and they would remember that sometimes the most terrifying thing in the universe was also the most noble. Crystallis looked at the humans working around her on the bridge of the ship that bore her name. They were not monsters. They were guardians, fierce, unyielding, and absolutely unwilling to let the darkness win. And that made all the difference.